All right, another podcast here from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be an awesome podcast today. Right before we get into it, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Everyone out there knows a veteran that's gone over, served this country, and has had difficulty transitioning back into normal society. VetLife is there to make that transition much easier. The easiest way to reach out to VetLife is to do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, let's get right into this. I'm joined by Jewell Jones today. Jewell is the youngest House of Representative member in Michigan's history. And, he's going to have a great story. Anytime you have people that are breaking barriers, setting records, becoming the first, there's always something special about those individuals. So I look forward to interviewing them today. And, let's get right into it. So for the people that don't know you, Jewell, let's talk a little bit about your background. Were you born and raised here in Michigan, and what led you into politics?
Yeah, definitely, bro. And I just want to say thanks for having me on, man. I grew up in Michigan. I'm a lifelong resident of Inkster, so, that's my hometown, right outside of Detroit. Spent a lot of time in Detroit, too, with the fam. But definitely, I've been around to a few different states. Got a pretty huge family, so while Michigan was the home, I definitely grew up, down south on the West Coast, on the East Coast, so over in Canada. But Michigan's home.
So, wow, you were moving all around. I kind of have a similar background. You lived in a bunch of different homes, a bunch of different schools.
Oh, well, not a whole lot of different schools. It was really just, moments at a time, just going to stay with, different family. So maybe not, for too long, but definitely probably, weeks at a time, just to, check out different areas, different lifestyles.
So what were you like as a young man? Were you a big sports guy? Let's talk a little bit about your childhood.
Yeah, definitely. I would, I like playing sports. I never liked looking at sports. I always liked to be the guy doing it, whether it was golf, tennis, basketball, football, wrestling, skating, street hockey, shooting stuff. I loved guns when I was younger too. I still do, but anything that people could do. I used to think I was a WWE wrestler back in the day. So definitely was busy. I used to get in a lot of trouble though. I was kind of an interesting child, but God worked on me over time. So
super active though, into tons of stuff. It sounds like a lot. In WWE when we were growing up, it was WWF back then,
right.
And we, everybody thought they were the next Macho Man or Hulk Hogan on the come up. So then, you're living in Inkster. How did you get into politics? It's something that currently in our lives, everybody is almost being drawn into the political scene, but usually only people that have family in there or have a certain calling to it get drawn that direction. What brought you into politics?
Well, I did a lot of networking. I wanted to be a spy when I was younger, so I was talking to everybody. I was getting all these different connections. Ran into Senator Carl Levin back in the day. I was probably 18, and we had this conference out in D.C. called the Congressional Black Caucus Conference. So I went there 2014. Seeing all these young people, all these black and brown folk, they're talking about taking it to the next level back home, all these great things they were doing. My parents always had me involved in the community, in the church and whatnot. Did a lot of volunteer work, so people see me grow up. And so when I got back home, seat opened up on City Council 2015. And, I was 19, I was a sophomore in college. They were like, hey, man, you should run for office. I was like, it'd be pretty dope to be on City Council. So I went ahead and did it. And then a year later, unfortunately, our state representative had passed away. But because of that, the citizens had nominated us to be the nominee on the ballot. And so it's kind of just people kind of forced me, but I made it. It's been a blessing. But I kind of just stumbled into politics, but I've definitely fallen in love with it, though.
So pieces just kind of fell into place.
Oh, yeah.
You put yourself out there. Like you said, you were big into networking. I love that you said, I wanted to be a spy when I was young.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You wanted to be in the intel division, and then it just led you into that direction. And this year's been a crazy year for politics. Overall, looking at between the coronavirus thing and we have the election and everything, it's basically consuming our lives. And you have the media's version versus what you're actually seeing.
Right.
Now, to someone on the outside, when you first get into a city council position, what is that like? What does your day-to-day look like? What does your week look like? What are your responsibilities in a role like that? And now you're on you're a representative for the state of Michigan.
Right.
That's huge. What type of leap was that to make?
I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing is constituency services. So, no matter what ideas you have when you get in office or the responsibilities that you have to take care of, the biggest thing is when the people call you that you're supposed to represent, it's what can you do for them? And so I think because we did very well at just delivering quality services, the leap wasn't that much of it wasn't that major. I think it was just learning the landscape was different. They have a joke out at the Capitol no one ever your first term, you might not even find all the different bathrooms, inside the Capitol. It's a lot to navigate, but because we built a solid team, and I always think the biggest thing is just solving people's problems, helping them get to tomorrow, and making today better. And since we did a good job of that, everything else kind of just fell into place. Because, in city council, your biggest thing is passing a budget, is helping to collect taxes, and, of course, responding to different situations that people call about. On the state level, it's similar. We're in charge of passing a budget for the state, also delivering service to our folks, and then, helping out create laws and different things of that nature. And all that stuff kind of comes with time. It's with anything in life. You never know. You can do as much planning and preparing as you want to do, but until you're in that role, that's when you really learn how to do it. And so the leap was nice, but it felt pretty comfortable. It felt like we were supposed to do it, and everyone supported us. We had a strong village, so.
From an outside perspective, it seems like we have two parties warring with each other. And Michigan's been like a battleground from the outside. You have two parties of the legislature that are, constantly at each other's throats. You have a governor that's trying to do what, in her opinion, is the right move, where, to other people it may not be. Is it as bad on the inside as it looks from the outside, or is there a little bit of spin that takes place through the filters that which, we receive the information? What do you think the state of politics is currently in Michigan?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a lot better. We had to just pay attention to Democrats and Republicans, for example. Of course, it's a two-party system. On the grand scheme of things, the two parties want different things. But at the end of the day, we kind of want the same thing. We're both doing, working in the interest of our supporters. And so, of course, while we're debating on a bill or working through different legislation, things might get a little partisan. Things might be, we might be battling and fighting. But at the end of the day, I think many of us, we can go out to dinner with each other. We can go and visit each other's homes, different things like that. And so while it appears that the conflict is major, it's really just more of a political thing. So on a personal level, many of us are, great friends, great colleagues. But when it comes time to, play that role and put on that particular hat, it's just certain things you have to do to work in the interest of your party. It's unfortunate it has to be like that sometimes, only because you realize, it's 110 state reps, 38 senators, the governor, lieutenant governor. And all of us collectively work for the entire state of Michigan. So, all 10 million people, we were supposed to work for all of them. Of course, we have our own districts. But until we get to a place where we actually look through that lens of saying, hey, I know I have my district, these particular people I represent, but we need to do what's in the best interest of the whole state, it's going to continue to just be, that degree of partisanship. But I'm confident we might get over that.
And honestly, it's great to hear you say that, because challenging dialogue is a good thing.
Right.
It is good to come together and be on different sides of an argument and brainstorm ideas and work together to try to find solutions, right? I mean, we should do those things. So it's good to hear that, the media makes it look like you two could never look at each other without, instantly there being a fight breaking out. It's good to hear that, there are difficulties, there are partisan issues, there are times where we're probably at each other's throats a little bit, but we're working towards solutions for the state and really for the people. You're trying to be a voice from the lower tier all the way up to the top tier. So currently, as of Wednesday now, there's another. Is it an executive order? How does this one working? Because I watched the governor's, whatever you'd call it last night, but I remember, the Supreme Court had just overruled against the 1945 law, if I'm not mistaken, and they ruled in favor of the other. So now there's another order being issued, but is it an executive order? From someone on the outside, how do I understand this, and how do I, make sense of it?
Right. So, the biggest thing, so that whole lawsuit that was even in the Supreme Court, that was a huge political thing anyways. But it happened, and, the challenge, it followed through on the behalf of the other party that had challenged the governor's office. But now this is more so, it's not really a lockdown. It's more so just limiting indoor crowds for the most part. And so this is not really even towards the degree that our original shutdown was. This is more so, hey, there's been a lot of cases, there's been a spike in them. Let's go ahead and close things down for restaurants, for example, that are able to open back up, or, a lot of fitness centers and whatnot. People are just going in. That stuff just has to stop. And it's for about 3 weeks. It's a mandate. And it's, Department of Health and Human Services is one that is pushing it heavily. And so it's just like a temporary pause, a break, just to see, how things can go if we do this so we can slow the spread again.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people are nervous because you remember 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Right.
And then we were laughing that it was like a 6-month anniversary. Like, oh my God, it won't end. But you believe, in your opinion, that it truly is just going to be a 3-week period where there's a temporary restriction on things.
That's what they're saying. So it's 3 weeks. So of course, I
Yeah,
mean,
but you got the inside view.
hey, well, everything is always constantly getting supervised and refined, and so you never know what can happen. It could be shorter than 3 weeks, it could be longer than 3 weeks. But I think at the end of the day, we have an elected governor here, and sure, the majority of Michigan decided on her to be the governor, and so. Not to say that it's important to blindly follow people, but if someone is taking advice from people that are subject matter experts in a particular field, and they're saying this is what we need to do, and of course, just quite personally, the pandemic has not been a major concern of mine. I'm still, even when we were under the shutdown, I work at the police department, and so, I was still out every single day. I had seniors and other people in my family that did not want to come out, so I was going out doing runs for them all the time, and so. I think it's certain things we have to do to take the precautions to be safe. And that's kind of stuff I've been doing my entire life, washing your hands, don't have people all in your face, don't touch everything. And that's the same sort of things I've been practicing. But since a lot of people don't do those things, right, it's really just kind of a directive to make sure that everyone is safe in a more formal way. And so I think it's important. It might be longer than 3 weeks, but you gotta take it day by day.
I feel some foreshadowing in that statement. But, yeah, I mean, I come from a world where we do jiu-jitsu. I'm on top of another human being, sweating on them.
Right,
They're
right.
breathing all over me. We're as close as you can possibly be without being intimate together.
Yeah.
And then what I'm going to do is shake that person's hand and then go with another person. And
Right.
that's like my norm, And, I mean, we grew up in a world playing in the dirt. We grew up in the world going out and interacting with the world around you is a healthy thing. You know what I mean? Like, it is good to interact with germs.
Right.
It's actually probably more damaging if you didn't go in the sunshine, you didn't, you know what I mean? You didn't interact with the world, because the first time you do, it's
Right.
going to smack you around,
Exactly.
right? I mean, you grew up playing in the dirt.
Oh, yeah.
So it feels counterintuitive to some degree to not interact with the world. But it's like, I understand there's definitely people that are at higher risk. There's people that, have compromised immune systems, that have comorbidities, that have a lot of issues that say, hey, you might have to play it extra safe. But to enforce such an overscaling thing, I think that's where people kind of get upset, is because man, if you're healthy, you take care of yourself, you wash your hands, you do the right things. To restrict the movement of any healthy people seems counterintuitive.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because let's pull an example. Like in Sweden, the country population is around 10 million, and Michigan's around 10 million people. Sweden has less deaths than the entire state of Michigan, and Michigan has enforced very strict protocol. Sweden's just kind of like, hey, get out there and roll the dice on yourselves. They implemented almost nothing. They limited groups over 50. They left bars wide open, restaurants wide open. So I don't feel that there's strong evidence that the lockdown really helps you.
Right.
And if you're a sick person, absolutely. Like I said, you need to be intelligent. But if corona is a serious threat, so is influenza, so is pneumonia, so is everything else that might.
Yeah, and I definitely can agree with that sentiment. Something I just came to realize, though, is really this: we all are citizens of this state, or citizens of this country, and so it's just there's laws and regulations and rules that we kind of organically submit to, and so. That's kind of why, at the end of the day, even though I might share some of those same feelings, I'm just like, hey, this is what the boss is saying, regardless if I agree with it or not. I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm going to, have some kind of charges or anything like that brought against me for not following that kind of order. But I could agree, because I have family in different places. I have a lot of colleagues in Nigeria, for example. I was talking to some folks the other day in Mexico, and it's wide open. And I think I was just talking to someone in Senegal this morning. They have 7 cases in the whole country.
I was just in Senegal, actually.
Yeah, and so I'm like, it's just we don't know what it is and how the virus is spreading, I suppose. And so this is why they're just trying to do something to at least put some people at ease. And so hopefully it doesn't last long and we figure out what's going on. But I'm kind of with you. Of course, this is a pandemic, but even I look at folks in my community, in the black community, for a long time. We got people dying from gun violence, all kind of stuff that, cool. Some of this, the Flint water crisis that happened years ago, the same way we were printing money for coronavirus, to respond to this? Why weren't we doing different things of that nature when, we had other major issues going on? So
that's a phenomenal question. I mean, I read that it was like the largest sum of money in the history of the United States politics have been moved around during this coronavirus crisis. And like, I get it. Initially, there was a theoretical threat that was coming at us. You remember when the television was telling us it was a 3 to 10% mortality rate? I was like, oh my God, are you talking about that many people are going to die? Yeah. And thank God the actual reality was nowhere near the theoretical threat. Thank God. But it feels almost as if some policies are still being made off the initial threat. Because like you said, man, there's been crises throughout our lifetime, several different ones where we should have been putting this type of effort forward. And I just don't see it. So looking at me as like a business owner here, when I shut down, when I closed down the gym, I closed down the first time that this all went down. My rent doesn't stop. I pay $10,000 a month. Yeah. That doesn't stop. That's a fixed cost. So I just have to eat all this in the name of, even though I'm healthy, the people that come in here are coming in by choice. They're very healthy people. They take care of themselves. Like our demographic is the least at rate, 99.9999%. You'll be fine. But, looking at someone like me, you would say, hey, just because, it's set it here, you're going to have to close that again. It's all on you. You have to eat everything.
I mean, I think the biggest thing, because we've had a lot of business owners, a lot of organizations that, of course, you got to take it on the chin when different things like this happen. Only because, of course, you're a businessman, so you know that with the different rules and stuff like that, different ordinances, it's just certain things we have to abide by just to make sure that we stay, in I guess we could say regulation or
compliant.
In compliance. But at the same time, it's just different ways we have to be innovative, So, of course, that bill's still going to be here. So it's different ways to work around the orders, different ways to work around these mandates to make sure that you can still make yourself whole at the end of the month. It's just, figuring out how do you adjust to this new game that we're playing. And so then once you figure that out, we've done a lot of different work with a lot of individual businesses to help them out, whether it be, restaurants or, fitness places, churches, all kind of different things, because a lot of people have been struggling, but it's just about figuring out how do we adjust to this new world that we're living in. Is it a different way that we can still get you to work with your clients, to work with your other, with your wholesalers, with anybody to still get the resources that you need to stay afloat. That's the biggest thing.
And when you look at it from the outside perspective, let's take restaurants for an example. You have to put on a mask when you enter the door.
Right.
When you see the hostess, the second you sit at the table, you take the mask off, and you all sit in the exact same building while eating, while breathing, while shoveling sustenance into your mouth. Okay, in the exact same environment. There's no science to that. There's no intelligence to that. You're saying that everybody has to wear a mask and maintain these social distances, and even outside. I was just in Las Vegas, and people outside in the fresh air with no one around them are wearing masks. Right. So you have to do that, but you can all congregate together at Applebee's, drink margaritas, get drunk, have a blast, and sit together in the same closed environment without a mask. There's no intelligence to things like that. Whereas when I feel like it starts breaking down, where a person like you or I will start to look at it and go, come on, man. Yeah. This doesn't even make sense.
Hey, it's not, life is not always about what makes sense, though. Of course we have our personal opinions and different things that we say, but, at the end of the day, you have to realize for me, I think a lot of times it's the thought that counts. And so, it's a lot of people that, while we might be confident in, our health, and we be confident in our abilities to survive and to maintain, there's a lot of other people that are, extremely terrified of what's going on. And so something as simple as, the governor or different elected officials saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. Everyone work from home. Do your best to stay at home. Really only go out for groceries. Try to limit your interaction with different folks. That can put a lot of people at ease, and it just helps with the overall sentiment of the state.
And I feel that. I feel like there's a certain, you're just showing compassion for people, and you're showing that, like, hey, I'm going to take the route of caution. But it's almost like there's a scale currently right now where caution can be on one side, but then the damage that you're doing to small businesses, the damage that's happening, like my personal life and all of these, this has to be on a scale, right? We have to balance, like, what is intelligent and what's reasonable versus just caution. Because otherwise, like, did you drive a car today?
Oh, yeah.
You took a risk. So did I.
Big risk.
You know what I mean? Like, car accidents happen. Like imagine waking up in the morning going, I want to report on how many cases of car accidents are in this country. Right. And if I don't know exactly how many car accidents are happening, everyone can't drive their vehicle, because you know what? You can kill other people and yourself if you get behind the wheel. Does that seem ridiculous? Well, it's similar.
Well, that's caution. I think the thing with caution here, why it's so important, is because no one has a cure for this, right? Of course, no one has a cure for anything. We can't say like, hey, we know exactly what to do to prevent a car accident, or we know exactly what to do.
You
to
could be
prevent
doing
getting
everything
shot.
right, and I could crash in you.
Yeah, I mean, people just fall out dead, and so we don't have a cure for a lot of different things. But because this is such a new, it's not necessarily a new crisis, but this new strand is a new. It's approaching us from a different angle where no one really knows exactly what to do with it. I guess it's just okay. I feel like it's okay for them to err in the way of caution, just to keep everyone else safe. I mean, I feel like I'm good. My fam's good. It's not been a problem, but I have definitely lost a lot of people that's been close to us. We lost one of our state representatives, Isaac Robinson, early in the year, and it's just like. It has no name on it. Like it can happen to anybody. It's been super healthy people. It's been people that's compromised immune systems, elderly folk, children, and so since no one knows exactly what to do with it, it's just like.
And I mean, life has risk.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to snap my fingers. I'm sure you would too, and wipe out risk. You know what I mean?
Right.
And be able to take a bullet and you're fine, or catch a virus and you're good. But like I want to break a little bit into further that with the idea of like cure and. With viruses, we've never, throughout human history, influenza included, you don't cure, like your immune system, your B cells and your T cells produce antigens, and your body, you have to give the body sometimes what it needs. You might have to support it. You might have to, like when grandma threw you chicken noodle soup and you stayed home, but you develop the cure for a viral infection.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Correct.
So we have a virus, which, so the normal cure should be our immune system. But let's say we say, well, this is a novel strain, as you just referenced. It's only novel in the way of it being a new strain. Every season's influenza you could call novel influenza, right? And coronavirus has been around for decades. They've been around for decades, and we've studied them, and we know that they generally cause flu-like symptoms. So I feel like when you're throwing those words out there, like listeners at home might be like, oh my God, it's a novel strain. There's no cure. But that can be misleading because there's not, we have a vaccine for influenza and it can kill 60 to 80,000 Americans every single season. That's incredible. You know what I mean? So when you look at this and you go, like you said, you have an immune system. There isn't cures for viruses. You support the body and you fight your way through it. What are we looking for then? Because coronavirus is not going anywhere. That's like one thing that, if you remember the flatten the curve thing, it wasn't going to take it away. It was just so the hospitals weren't overloaded, right? Exactly, slow it down. But without there being a cure, I don't understand, like, what is the end game then? Because coronavirus is not going anywhere.
Well, I personally think it's this entire system of government, the entire system of how we do business here, I think even in America ultimately, has been fractured. And so when I think about different ways in my family or, colleagues of mine have cured different things, I look at like a lot of natural remedies. I'm not sure if you're familiar with different things, but of course, broken bones before, I've, been burned before, cut up, scratched up, whatever, maybe a little under the weather. There's been certain things where I can go to like my grandma or like, an elder in the community or something, be like, hey, take a couple spoonfuls of this or take some of this, and next thing you know, you're back in shape. But because now, you look at different things like Big Pharma with the pharmaceutical companies and a lot of other different things. Just the entire system that's been set up in this country does not allow really for us to find a lot of those natural remedies or allow us to really tap in with the power and the strength of our bodies to really repair themselves because we just become dependent on manufactured materials, I would say. And so since this is where we're at now, and it really will take an entire probably like a monumental shift for like hearts and minds in the country to just wake up to this concept. We find ourselves in a position where we are dependent on manufactured goods and on material things. And so it's kind of just where we're at right now because if we go on the side of things where we say, hey, your body is strong enough to go ahead and fight off this crisis, we're going to be looking at, a survival system where it's like survival of the fittest all over again. Something that's like one of the original
to achieve herd immunity, right? Where we'd have to get to the point where literally it's made its way through society enough that.
Right.
But my understanding of herd immunity is when you allow healthy people, children, like being an example, because it's almost a non-existent threat to children. Yeah. You allow children and healthy people to get this virus and produce the immunity. They create like a metaphorical barrier from the sick people because if you don't allow herd immunity, more sick people are going to have to be the ones that encounter the virus and produce it. That doesn't fare well for the sick people.
Right.
It's much better to have the healthy people be the barrier, right?
Well, maybe I'm not. That's not my subject. So I'm not exactly sure how all that goes. I just know on the surface level that, of course, with those different concepts, people's bodies are built up in different ways, and we approach things differently. So since I'm not, I can't speak intelligently about all those different things. I wouldn't really get too deep into that, but that would really just be a way where it's almost like a hands-off style of government. We're just like, hey, we're gonna just let the virus be out here. Whatever happens, happens. And I don't think that's really what the people are trying to hear.
Sure. And now, if with the way that coronavirus has been, it would almost say that every single flu season, we're going to have to repeat a system like this until we have a solution, until whether it's a vaccine or you started to get into big pharma, which could be a whole other podcast that we could talk about forever. I mean, it's the state of health in this country is terrible. I mean, most people, we treat symptoms in this country. We don't try to fix problems.
Right.
And that's a problem, man. And together with our families and our communities and our people, we should be combating to do better than that, 100%. So if we are just kind of, playing this on the side of caution, it's going to happen every single season indefinitely. And not only coronavirus, influenza, pneumonia, there's a lot of things that wipe people out because we're not in a great state of health. So for me, sitting on the, on the side, like you said, unless there's a monumental wake up of human beings where we say we're not doing the right things right now. We can support each other better. We can bring each other, better health. We can be more educated. We're going to be in a mouse wheel. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like we're going to be in the same exact cycle, and it's going to be like on March, February, the governor's going to jump on TV and tell you that you can't leave your home, and then it's going to, and it just doesn't seem like a practical solution to me.
Yeah. That may very well be true, but I mean, it's just like we have to be patient with progress a lot of times. Take our time, see how things go out, and hopefully things just work out for the best. Of course, coronavirus has been around for a long time, and we're not exactly sure what the transition is going to look like. But if anything that we're doing now helps out at all, because like you said, it's not really so much about completely eradicating this from our society. It's really just trying to slow it down because it's been moving at an alarming rate, quite frankly. So we can even shut it down and slow it down by any means. I think that's just the biggest thing that we can do right now. Because we just lost. This year has just been a very strenuous year. We've lost so much of life, not only from the coronavirus, but we've lost major figures, and it's just been a huge toll I think that's been taken on the community.
100%. And we have a thing going on right now where we're very concerned with cases. We're very concerned with cases, whether they're asymptomatic or mild symptoms or nothing. We've never been like that in the past. Like in America, imagine if you woke up, you felt great, but they told you have to go get checked for influenza right now. It wouldn't really make sense. You'd say, well, why am I going to get tested for that? If I'm sick, I should stay home. I mean, when we were little, you'd be sick as a dog, and your parents would probably still send you to school. I remember that, get in there. You're not staying home. But we're at this point now where we're telling everybody that you need to get tested. And we're focusing so much on these cases. And in the beginning, it was all about the mortality rate, which I get. Like I said, in the beginning, it was like, this is no joke. Right. But now we are so stuck on every single person that thinks you might have even encountered someone should go get tested. Do you understand the logic behind that? What is the massive push to know the number of cases when asymptomatic cases should be nearly negligible? Like up to 50 million people get influenza each year. Do we need to know, hey, did you have it yet? Did it not? Why does that matter?
Yeah, I think it's just a way to really just collect data on the situation. But at the end of the day, I think that we've heard a lot of stories and we've seen a lot of different things of numbers being inflated, a lot of cases being, I would say, probably misappropriated. And so, of course, with anything, the data is always going to be skewed. But I think initially the thought was sincere that hey, let's figure out what this looks like on a graph. Can we set any kind of trends or, do any kind of pattern analysis? But because you run into, skewed data and different things of that nature, it makes it a lot more difficult because, of course, everyone that may think they have it or everyone that might get diagnosed with it quite possibly might not even ever had it before,
What you just said is a great point. there's a great point in the fact that they're trying to paint perspective, you're saying. You're basically trying to get everything together so you can really look at this thing objectively. That makes more sense because I'm trying to figure out, you have people being so concerned whether they have it or not. Man, if you're an asymptomatic person that crushes the virus, be thankful.
Right.
Be thankful that you're in good enough health and that you crushed it. But I guess if you're trying to paint a proper perspective of what we're dealing with, you would need to do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? You need to try to work your way through this and say, like, okay, what is the end game here? What is the actual threat? And then what are the correct steps, to fix it? Exactly. So right now, we have Governor Whitmer, like I said, was on TV last night. She put this order out. It's being enforced by the public health departments, is what you said earlier in the podcast.
Department of Health and Human Services. They're taking the lead effort on it.
So for me being on the outside, if the Supreme Court shut down the executive orders that came from the most powerful person in the state, because to me, I look at the governor as like the most powerful person in the state of Michigan. They overruled her ability to enforce these things. What allows the Department, of Health and Human Services the ability to enforce these rules? And like, what is going to happen for the people that say, hey, I'm not with the science and the data. I'm going to take my precautions, but I'm not going to follow what you're saying to a T. Yeah. What is the enforcement branch at that point? Because wouldn't it then get appealed all the way to the Supreme Court if this issue is brought up?
I mean, possibly, but it's not that the Supreme Court, I'll say, knocked down the governor's powers. They just limited some of the orders. Marked them like null and void just because.
Yeah, as of May 1st or something.
Right.
The ones before that were good, and then
just operating under a particular act, they were basically just saying like, hey, this is not in accordance with that. And so this is what happened. So whoever put forth the lawsuit just had a very good argument, to be exact. But it doesn't limit the governor's powers at all. So now she's back leading the effort. MDHHS is just one of the departments that, because of course they're dealing with the health and human services, they're just taking point on this. So they're putting together graphics and different information to help basically supplement the governor's ideas and her orders. But she's still got the juice for sure.
What would you say are your biggest goals in politics? Like, what are the things that you're really pushing for to try to, to represent your people, to represent Michiganders, to represent human beings? What would you say are your goals in the political spectrum?
Yeah, my biggest thing, I think we just passed through a expungement package. So I definitely am big on criminal justice, just giving people back their rights to ownership, employment, education. So cleaning up people's records was something that was huge that we just passed through. Aside from that, I really just kind of go with the pulse of the people, depending on what the general appetite of folks is, what the pressing issues are. That's kind of what I focus on. So, of course, that thing can change every day. It can change every year. But aside from that, I think the biggest thing is just opening up doors and creating a pipeline. Of course, we're familiar with the school-to-prison pipeline. And so, I like changing that up and creating, more pipelines that are conducive towards our growth. And so, me even being in the legislature, I've opened up doors now where the position that I had on city council, now I put the next youngest person on city council after me. So, we're opening doors for people to say, hey, this is possible, you can do it. Because a person like me, we haven't had a state rep from my district, from my area since the 60s. And so it was even a different district, and I believe it was District 20 back then. So it's like, after all these years, we finally get more representation. So now my biggest thing is how do we let other young people know, young people of color, black people, how do we let folks know, like, hey, this is your environment to participate in? And even beyond that, I think at the end of the day, I think Malcolm X said it best. He said there can be no black-white unity until there's black unity. So, of course, my primary focus a lot of times is folks that look like me in my community. But at the end of the day, I have a very diverse district. I represent Inkster, Garden City, Dearborn Heights, Livonia, Westland. And so even the way I grew up, it's never just been about black people. It's like, I think at the end of the day, in genuine community, there are no sides. And so the more that we can push this idea of building more bridges and eliminating some of these walls, that's probably my biggest focus, and using my platform to do that, to say, hey, I think we all need to come together. We all live here. We need to figure out how we can spread more of these peace, unity, and love, so we can actually put a good foot forward and do some great things in our community.
100%, because we are a melting pot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the beauty of this country, man, is that we're people that should come together and figure out how to live better than it is in a lot of places in the world. You know what I mean? So like, there's a beauty in that dream, and it's ideological, and you have to chase after it, and you probably stumble constantly. But you would say throughout history, like, to even be able to say that, since the 60s, I'm the first person that's representing my district like this, we're definitely making progress. Like, we are getting better. We just have to stay vigilant in that fight, right? Because, like, around here, or, stereotypically throughout the past, I've heard of Kahakta and Howell and stuff is like heavy places of racism. And I don't encounter racism, but if I turn on the TV, they tell me, it's rampant, it's everywhere. People are horrific human beings. There are races, for sure. Yeah. And we need to, as a collective society, be like, hey, that doesn't belong here. Yeah. We don't allow that. We're not okay with that. But I feel like the television probably makes it more of like you're looking for the boogeyman under your bed every night. I guess where I'm going with this is we just recently saw like the Black Lives Matter movement. We see a lot of these movements to make change, but I think change comes on a smaller level than all of this. I think change comes from things like this, like people sitting down, having challenging dialogue, seeing our similarities versus our differences. It doesn't matter if you grew up here and I grew up there, or you're this skin color, I'm that skin color, you're this status, I'm that status. What matters is we're human beings chasing the goal of happiness, right? And together we can do that much more efficiently. So, is there anything that you would speak on, because it's such a controversial topic, with the Black Lives Matter movement or any of these things? Do you think this is conducive of the direction that we need to go? Do you think in some ways it promotes more division? Just, you give me your thoughts on it, because I've stayed very far outside of it, only watching from afar, and I only like to get my information from like human beings that I know and respect. The television might tell me one version, and then some random stranger might tell me another. A Facebook post will tell me a third. I like to hear directly from people that are involved.
Yeah, I personally know some of the founders and a lot of participants of the Black Lives Matter movement. I think it's a great thing when you talk about driving the narrative or driving the conversation for stuff, right? So I agree with you wholeheartedly when you say it's more on the basic levels where we get the most done. I've always believed that all politics is local, and I even remember being on city council. There was a lot that I could do there that allowed me to directly interact with the citizens that I don't always get to do now, since I might be an hour and a half away at the Capitol. And so, of course, I think different movements, and of course, there's a lot of movements that I probably disagree with, but I think at the end of the day, anybody that's willing to get up and, really utilize some of the freedoms that we have in our country, right? Freedom of speech, freedom to petition, and the freedom of assembly, all these different things. When you realize that we have these different guaranteed rights, and you go ahead and do what you feel like is important, and you go ahead and you speak up. You stand up, you demand more from your leaders. I think that's a very healthy thing. Now, of course, there's different operatives and tacticians and folks like that get in and disrupt a lot of these movements, and sometimes put a black eye on a lot of different things. And when that happens, I think that's, got to be a casualty of change sometimes. A lot happens that might take away from a movement, but at the end of the day, I think that is very healthy. I think it's good. And it's just like I said, that about the Black Lives Matter movement. I know about, I see some of these other organizations out here that I might not disagree with, but I can at least respect folks organizing to say, hey, this is what we believe in. And I think it's a beautiful thing when someone is willing to actually be vocal about their beliefs and about their thoughts, so we can actually have a healthy conversation about it and know that, hey, this is what this person thinks, this is what I think. Let's figure out what we can do about it. But I'm with you, though. I think that we definitely need to make sure that although some of these moves might be on a national, international level, the most basic level when we talk about our neighborhoods and our blocks, our local communities, being able to talk to your neighbor about these different things and figuring out how you can organize block clubs and different things like that, that's really where you get your biggest success at.
I'm going to tell you that I'm someone that I'm going to publicly admit this. I've never voted left or right. I literally just stay completely out of politics, and I try to help my community as much as possible. I'm on the mats every day. I work with the local court systems with struggling youth. I do as much as I can that I have my finger on.
Right.
But I've never got involved on the bigger game, because I'm like, you know what? I don't know it well enough on the inner workings to make the right decisions. And I'm just not that type of guy. Unless I really, something resonates with me, I don't do it. And I'll tell you that there's a conservative perspective that is painted down to me that you'll hear through whether you read conservative, writings or you listen to a conservative channel, where basically they'll say, democratic places such as Detroit and all these things are suppressing the people because you have the leadership that is supposed to be bringing those people up. But those are the areas that, why can we not better the standard of living for human beings that are here in this area with us, you know what I mean? And the way it's painted is like, well, it's, if you notice, inner cities are more democratic, and that's where all the problems are, so it must be their fault. That's kind of a weak argument, you know what I'm saying? But then again, why are we not able to promote growth and change? Whereas I feel like if me, you, and 5 other good human beings got down and we had resources and money to work with, and we had the ability to infiltrate into the communities and educate people and bring people up, why could we not make monumental change? Because there are still ghettos across this country, and they've been for decades. There are still broken homes that are ravaging, low-income families, like black and white and Mexican and every color on the spectrum. Low-income families are broken down homes. And like I was working with the UAW in Detroit and going down to the city and teaching a bunch of the kids martial arts just to try to make them feel good. And like, man, the quality of living down there, like it tears your heart out of your chest in the way that those people live. Why are we not able to make major change? I know that's a very difficult question, but what do you think is at the core of that? Why are they staying the same?
Equity. I think some people need more than other folks, but I mean that's the whole thing. Why even earlier we're talking about changing the hearts and minds, right, of the people. Until we get to a place where we realize that we're all in this together, I think Dr. King said it. We might have come on different ships, we're in the same boat now, right? And we can get more into that mentality to say, hey, you know what, I'm in pretty good shape. My finances are good. My family is good. X, Y, and Z is good. But I see this person over here needs a little bit of assistance. Sometimes we have to realize that person needs a little bit more assistance, and we have to do what we need to do to go ahead and make sure that they're made whole. So once we get in a mindset where we look at different areas, right, across this entire spectrum, this person might have enough and they're doing good. This person might not have a whole lot and they're doing good, so they're fine. This person might have a lot and they're doing bad, or this person might not have enough and they're doing bad. We have to figure out how do we really spread these resources across. And we've looked at different things from education to recreational things to just straight dollars. And you look at the budget here in the state and the way that money and stuff is earmarked, is definitely not equitable. Things might be fair, things might be equality and all that kind of stuff. But when we look at equity, we have to look at, okay, it's not a level playing field. This person started the race, 100 meters behind the other person. So we need to first get them up on the same baseline. Then we can go ahead and make it happen again. But until we get in the mindset of equity and really realize how we're spreading these resources across the state, we're constantly going to be, asking the same question.
Because I feel like, you're a perfect example, and I feel like I am as a business owner. I fought professionally and around the world. It's really a lot on the individual. There are absolutely people that start with way less, but there's also probably people that have started with way more than you and I, that come from incredibly affluent, well-educated homes, living in a beautiful place, that achieve far less. You really, there's a certain personal responsibility that needs to be there too, because I've found in my life that the easier I make someone's life, or if I give them handouts, they need it in them. You know what I'm saying? You know exactly what I'm getting to here is like, we have to, it probably starts smaller within homes and families and community. You have to raise your children to see potential within themselves. You have to inspire them to go chase a dream in this world. You've got to learn what grit is and hard work. And I know people that live off welfare that, regardless of color, they're accepting of it. Why should I work hard when I'm being taken care of? I don't think you can force people into being goal chasers or dream chasers. It's got to be deeper than that. You know what I'm saying? Like Les Brown is a motivational speaker I listen to a lot. He's phenomenal. There's so many, Eric Thomas and countless others that come from literally scraps, like being born on an abandoned building floor and take over the world, right? Something. Some of that is from within, and it almost sounds like, from the perspective that I was understanding what you were presenting, it almost feels like you're saying that we should regulate people into having to give to others. I think we definitely need to try to level playing fields. I think we need to try to bring people up, but there's personal responsibility to be great in life.
Yeah. I definitely, I would agree. But because I think at the end of the day, of course, it comes down to the individual. You have to be the person that you want to be, and you have to do what you have to do to get there. You know, it's about optimism and execution, of course.
Like, you wouldn't have let obstacles hold you down, man. I don't care. Like, I can tell by your energy and the spirit that you walked in this building with, you wouldn't have been held down whether you were born in Detroit or born in the most affluent community you could find. You were going to find a way to be successful because you have it in here.
Well, you know, but that all depends, though. It's about access, it's about exposure, different opportunities, right? So I was blessed to have, you know, I had some wonderful parents. I had a wonderful community. I had a wonderful family, a lot of great friends. I did a lot of stuff, you know, growing up. I've lived in a lot of different areas. I've learned how to move around. I've learned how to really stretch myself to accomplish different things that I wanted to accomplish. You know, when I had a lot on my plate, I just got a bigger plate. You know, that's different things that I was able to do because I was in the mindset and the realization that, hey, I can do these things. Anything is possible. You know, this is kind of stuff that I grew up learning. Anything is possible. If you believe it, you can achieve it. All these different things, right? But I think where the fracture is, and you're right on point saying that it starts at home. I think charity starts at home. That's in the Bible or something like that. And so of course, that's where the basis should be. The parents should be putting that love and that success and that grit and that energy into their children. But a lot of times they just don't have it. I mean, you look at someone. I know that you talked about your parents. And then think about people that might have, you know, lost parents at a way earlier age or might have been thrown into the system or something like that. It's just so many different societal problems and issues that are really just essentially out of our control. And so it's almost like a hit and miss to know if someone's going to make it or not. And it really depends on, you know, being in the right place at the right time and being able to say yes to opportunity or being able to say no to opportunity. And so we can't really guarantee the success of any person, and an individual can't even guarantee the success of themselves. It's really just a point of realizing that everything is everything, and this is the way that the world is, and until we figure something better out, this is kind of just like the format that we had to play by.
I agree 100% because I don't know if you can ever like regulate, okay, if we do these things for these people, then we know they'll be a set. Right. Yeah. You can't, man. You can give some people the world and they're determined to burn it down. Yeah, I mean, it's just the way it works. I mean, you probably have had friends and family that, like, I've lost friends to drugs and stuff that you see so much potential in them. And like, you have the world in front of you, but man, unless if that psychology is not there, it's just not going to go well. You know, so let's talk a little bit about this wild election. Like I said, I haven't voted, so I want to put that out there real quick.
That's crazy, bro. I'm glad you don't live in my district, man, because I would have needed that vote, man.
So right now, we had the election. We were supposed to have the election results forever ago. Now there's lawsuits across the entire nation in multiple different states. What is going on from someone that's on the inside that has a way better perspective than me? When are we going to get results? Are states possibly flipping at this point? Like, could that happen? Could there be an overrule? Because I saw the Associated Press had already declared a winner. They declared Joe Biden a winner, but now there's people that are withdrawing statements. Where are we at with this election, man?
Yeah, I mean, of course, what's going to happen right now, the same way we're going through a redistricting here in the state of Michigan, for example. So, you know, of course, they're going to redraw the lines, but what's going to happen is it's probably going to be challenged in court, and there's going to be a whole other process, so we might not have, you know, new districts for quite a while. The same thing's kind of happening with this in regards to the presidential election. So what we know is, of course, Biden's got more votes than Trump, right? But because of the character that our current president is, I mean, he just wants to make sure that it is what it is. You know, he's probably been caught as a surprise. They've done a lot of work, spent a lot of money. Really, we're expecting a different outcome. But since we're at where we're at right now, because the system allows for you to do different things like recounts and challenge things, that's kind of where we're at now. But what we know is that Biden did get the popular vote in many of these places. You know, he got the electors that he needed to win. And so at the end of the day, we know how it's going to go. And so we end up recounting votes or doing anything like that. We're just going to recount the same kind of vote. He's going to lose twice, you know, and Biden's going to win twice. But since that's a part of the process and it allows for that, it's like we're just going to have to go through that for right now.
And if anything, it might re-promote faith in the system that when you go through all the numbers again and you go through everything and then the result is final, there's not going to be 4 years of, well, this happened or that had. You're almost better to let it take place and then show that, hey, here's the results. It is what it is. Now move forward.
Right.
I'm going to be honest, though, and like I said, I didn't vote in the presidential election, but I've watched I try not to watch anything really Donald Trump, although I had to watch every White House briefing in its entirety during the lockdown because I was trying to figure out what's going on with coronavirus. Okay. But other than that, I'm just not into that world. Like I said, I'd rather put my time on the mats. But with that being said, I have watched some things with Joe Biden, and I'm going to be honest, and it's hard to say this publicly. The man seems like he's slipping a little bit mentally. He really is. And that worries me as we're going to have the ruler of our country who is, I mean, he is definitely to some degree struggling. Why wouldn't we put up a candidate that like look at like a Barack Obama, the most charismatic, well-spoken, articulate, incredibly inspiring human being that brought the nation like on their feet, right? How do we go from an Obama, to which I know he was his VP. Yeah. I don't think Biden lasts 4 years in the presidency. I mean, like I said, from an outside perspective, and I don't mean this as an insulting way. I mean this just from watching the gentleman not taking either side, going like, I don't think that guy makes it through a presidency. And we're talking about probably one of the most stressful jobs on earth. Yeah. You're going to put someone with a mental state that at best is a little bit shaky.
Hey, you never know. I mean, it really just depends. I think from my interaction with the president-elect, he's always been on point. He's always been doing his thing, been real sharp. And I think even in addition to that, he has an excellent team. So even one of his senior advisors, Simone Sanders, is super squared away, young lady. And so I think a lot of times when you think about anything, even me, for example, I was very young when I entered the world of politics. And so, of course, I didn't know everything. And so what I did was surrounding myself by a wonderful team of individuals that and advisors that knew.
So even if he fails, the team's got him. Is kind of the faith you have in it.
Right. Well, I think he doesn't fail because of the people he has around him. Because at the end of the day, we have to realize that you can't do anything in this life by yourself. And so if you have a squared away team, I think you'll be in pretty good shape to have different things happen. And that's the beautiful thing about life is that since we don't do it by ourselves, as long as we make sure that we go around and the same what you're talking about earlier, like if me and you got down with some other folks and took the resources and did what we wanted to do, sure, we could uplift the community. It's the same thing, I think, with Joe Biden. He can uplift this country because of the people that he puts around him. And so we'll be looking at an entire shift of a different, administrative shift. And so you look at different department heads going to be coming in a different cabinet. And so as long as he does, him and the vice president-elect, Kamala Harris, as long as they do their due diligence and pick people that have the wherewithal to really accomplish great things, I think that even looking at Joe Biden as a person, we kind of can disregard personal things that we have from a perspective view that concern him, because we'll be like, hey, life is pretty good. The departments are functioning well. The general sentiment across the country as well, but we just have to get to that position first,
Now, with all this recounting and all these things, who makes the decision on this? I've always wondered, what is the authority, the final authority because aren't the electors supposed to vote in December? Isn't it like December 8th? Okay, but then when is the presidency, when is the end of this timeline that we have to have someone declared by?
So I'm not exactly sure the timeline in terms of the recounts and whatnot. I know for sure, as many of us know, come January 20th, 21st, something like that. That's when the inauguration is supposed to be. So I'm sure that it has to happen sometime between that entire scope of time. But in terms of how quick it can go, I'm not really even sure.
And who makes that decision? Because right now you're going to have one side saying absolutely not, this is the answer, and the other side's going to say absolutely not, this is the answer. Who is going to make that decision? Where does that come from? Because both sides they're in a power struggle that I don't think either are going to back down from. Biden saying absolutely not, I won the votes, look at the numbers. Trump saying no, there's fraud, there's that. What settles this?
Well, I mean, it's not like a particular person going to decide, but the people decide, right? It's going to be based on the numbers. And so depending on how those numbers come back, I mean, the numbers won't lie. It just depends on, what that says, and then when they calculate it, if it's in Biden's favor, cool. if it's
Have you
entrusted.
seen all the people that are freaking out on social media about what they went to bed on election night? They woke up the next morning, and in Wisconsin, Michigan, and other places, the votes jumped to 138,000 for Biden, 0 for Trump, and they're like citing that. You've seen the memes, I'm sure, like Trump peeing, and then Biden has like the stream that goes. Citing things like this. What do you say to things like that when you see those? Because I've seen them. I don't know if the data is right or wrong or what it is, but I do know that like when I went to bed, flew back, the numbers were in one spot. I did wake up the next morning; it was completely different at 3 a.m. Does that concern you, or is that like, hey, man, at the end of the day, the ballots were in there. It is what it is.
Yeah, no, that doesn't concern me. I mean, you just have to look at the way that things take place on election night. I mean, you have absentee ballots coming in, you have the actual votes,
And there's no deadline. There's no state law that requires them to be in at a certain time or anything.
Well, they're in. The thing is getting them counted. So of course the numbers might not all the way be counted. So you pay attention to the way that the votes come in when people are tracking it. For example, it'll say like a certain amount of the
like
precincts are
86% is reported,
something like that. So you just have to look. Some cities do a wonderful job of getting the information in, getting it calculated, getting it sent to the county. County sends to the state X, Y, and Z. But then you got a lot of other places, and then there's new updates to election laws and whatnot every year. And so maybe some of these huger cities or things with more complex like factors that go into their electoral process, they had to deal with that the night of the election. And when you take that into account, that's when you realize, that's why sometimes we don't get the votes until the next morning or later that day, is because we have to wait until all those votes get counted. And that puts a lot of stress on a lot of our local city clerks and, county clerks. And so that's not really something that I would say we should be concerned about. That's really just like a natural, organic thing.
So there isn't an exact law about the time that they have to be turned in by or anything like that, because that would be the only thing they could stand on. It would be to say, hey, the votes had to be in by this date. But if there's not a law for that, you have to count every vote.
Well, they have the polls, for example, like the polls close at 8 p.m. on election day, right? And any other ballots supposed to be submitted by then. Now, it shouldn't be any other votes that come in after that deadline. It's just getting those votes counted. It's just the biggest thing.
Yeah,
right?
no, you have to count every vote that came in.
Yeah.
But like if the votes, I thought you would still count the votes that came in at 3 a.m. or whatever they were. You're saying those votes were already there. That's just when the counting got finished.
The count. It just takes a long time to count votes sometimes. And I mean, it's new technology now, and then it's just a lot. That's a huge process that like clerks go through, and so sometimes they do a wonderful job. So other times it's just a more difficult process.
Now, how do you do a recount on over 5 million ballots? Are these ballots saved somewhere? Are they stored somewhere? Like, how do you recount that?
It's supposed to be stored somewhere. Yeah.
Okay, so they're supposed to keep every single vote that took place.
I'm sure, and I'm not extremely familiar with it, but I'm sure that at least for a temporary timeline after election, they hold on to like the ballots just in case something like this happens. I'm not sure if they ultimately destroy them or not, but I'm sure just in case a recount or something happens within a window that they hold on to them. So they should be stored somewhere, I'm sure.
So the people on the outside can know that at least a ball is moving in a direction, because at one point we were thinking, okay, we're just never going to find out what the results are of this thing.
It's all good. It's all good.
That's awesome to hear. Well, man, anything else? I mean, we've been rolling for an hour, and I feel like we've had really good conversation, and I think this will put a lot of people at ease, because I have friends that are on the furthest left spectrum in the world that think the right is the devil and they're the worst human beings on earth.
Right.
And I have the opposite. I have people on the farthest right that think the left are these horrible people that want to destroy the nation. And I tend to just believe that listen, there's a little bit of a show that takes place, okay? Like, we're closer than we think. We are probably some people are separate on some core issues, but overall, people are trying to find a way to be the best society possible, right? And that's like the one. I have a certain sanctuary in this building. It doesn't matter if you're left or right when you're on the mats. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. It doesn't matter if you're white or black. Like, we all just train together, man. You know what I mean? Like, I was just in Philly with my one of my good friends, Dante. He's black. And then I was straight into Las Vegas with Taylor. He's white. Like, those are no differences. Like, they're just people, right? We get to just come together. We work together. We help each other. You have my back. I'll have your back. It's that simple. And we need to kind of get back to that, because I feel like whether through the media or through all this stress that everybody's been put under in the nation right now, people are just ripped apart. You know what I mean? And it's like, once you get to a certain degree apart, the lines of communication aren't even open.
Right.
Like, people are not even going to be willing to hear what someone else says. You know, actually, to be honest, you saw that a lot with Trump.
That's how it is.
Some people hate that man to such a degree, which is weird. You probably have never met him. You haven't interacted with him.
Right.
But he is a symbol. And he's a symbol for a lot of things that you don't like. Right. So what they'll do is no matter what he says, they just have to believe the opposite.
Yeah.
That's just a bad way to live. Because like a horrible person can say something that's accurate.
Right.
A phenomenal person can say something that's false.
Yeah.
Right? So we gotta stop. We gotta like calm down a little bit, all come back together, believe in our processes again, work together as people, talk to our elected officials. You know what I mean? And you know, hopefully people like you can keep steering us in a good direction, man, because I don't want another 2020.
You got that, James. I don't even think it's a place that we get back to. It's a place where we have to go. I mean, we look at the history of different things. We have never really been at a place where we've really, that entire utopia you just described, we haven't really been there yet. But I'm confident that now, because of different things that happen in folks' lives, and of course this younger population now that we have of people, we're just on a different pathway. You know, we're not concerned about the same things folks have been concerned about for years ago. And so ultimately I think we can get to a place like that, and it's on the way. And I'm just confident that we get there, you know, sooner than later.
What are your goals in politics? Are you going to be our governor one day? Or like what would you say if you looked to the future and you said, it is my goal for my constituency, for my future, for my family, for my legacy? What are your goals in politics?
You know, but I have no goals, bro. I am strictly focused on today.
In the moment.
Yeah, and so, you know, all that really just depends on the people. I know for sure I'll always be serving, and every day I like to increase my capacity of service, and so I know I'll definitely be on a much greater scale, but I have no idea where I'll be, you know, and I don't really plan too much for it. I'm really just focused on making an impact now that will be very positive later.
That's awesome, man. Well, man, I appreciate having you on the podcast. It's cool that you're a fan of MMA. Yeah, you know, like I said, you'll have to tune in and watch the UFC debut, Parisian. And, man, just keep working for the people because there's a shattered trust, I feel like, in the process right now in the system and just everything that's going on. But we can rebuild it. We can come back together and show people that, okay, this was a little bit of a nightmare. Maybe one day we'll all laugh about what 2020 brought to the table.
Who knows?
But sometimes madness promotes growth, man.
Yeah,
sometimes tough times, you know what I mean, bring out the best in us. So I hope that I can see the vision that you have where we go, you know what, we work through this tough time, we come back together, we work more towards that utopia that we'll never achieve, but we can chase it. We can chase it. We can get
it. We're still young, man. We still young.
Exactly. There you go. How old are you?
25.
25 years old, 100%, man. We got a lot of time, like you said, and a lot of the old guard is changing. A lot of the old ideologies are kind of dying out, and people are more awake now than they've ever been. Thank God, because we're more connected than we've ever been. In the palm of our hands, we can interact with most of the information in the world. You know, so like there's such a formula that exists for us to really grow and become our best. We just got to make it happen.
True. That's it.
Well, Jewell Jones, it was truly a pleasure having you on the podcast today. You know, maybe after all this election and madness and everything dies down, you know, I'd love to bring you back in and just talk about the things that we're working on, talk about the goals that we have, talk about how people can get involved and be more, you know, proactive in their communities, bring people up together, just work towards a better future.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me on, bro.
Appreciate it very much, man.